Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I make for Jacob as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, I think we have an artist that I haven't listened to yet. This is titled PG1 and this is titled Kill the One. Although when I listen to that, I am thinking that maybe I have heard that track before. That name does sound somewhat familiar. As I understand it, they're a somewhat controversial figure in the scene that they're involved with, where they were located. There's been a bit of there's been a little bit of the case of keeping the man down, if you know what I mean. But we're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Kill the One.
看够了你牵强的解释，生命写得一塌糊涂，是不是没读过书不会写字？什么 PG1、PG2， 声称自己抑郁住，2年过去了还没死，害得老子继续吐。当年我也曾经喜欢过你，把你的缺点过滤，可你不争气到让全国人都在唾弃，还装作逢场作戏，从3万英尺落地，这种变化你觉得戏剧不？你还是没觉得是自己的错误，亲手毁了自己，事业生涯开始落幕。本以为你会长点记性，挫折不过是人生的过渡 ，unexpected， 只是个没人品的恶处。歌词误导青少年思想退化，人设崩塌，活该就要被骂。知错犯错，恬不知耻，侮辱。看你如今憔悴的样子，想问你是不是还要继续去聊废话
So I assume this is like from the perspective of like social media and people commenting on someone without understanding the full story. I think it's really it's a hell of a track because the story that I'm reading it's like enthralling and invigorating, and I think that the conversational tone of it, as well as the context it sort of spurns on you over time, that the backing is just the backing at this point. It's one of the rare situations where it works so well.
问问你心里是否对得起自己的团队，心里难道没有对他们一丝丝的惭愧？他的出现是为了让中文说唱更加纯粹，如今你只为了你的助金粉和利益沉醉。恭喜你毁了 hip hop， 这文化不需要你，没人接受你道歉，要么去死，要么滚蛋回家。你说你人品到底多差，连曾经团队都不帮你说话。
Grace is like the overdubbing, the harmonics, harmonizing is sort of demonic sounding.
清楚事情到处躲藏拖沓，自我黑化后质问发疯，凭什么嘲讽我？因为你的破事就是打压文化的导火索。别想到臭美文化人品来想不通，为什么还有人支持你？想当初的比赛绝对是你公司走后没有内幕，嗤之彼。没良心的艺人红了后渐渐越探阶带回了题，都是你出了19八卦，甩给了这文化，用弱智的发音天生的就自己。所以不用过多的解释，滚到一边硬叫。我就是看不惯这种人，要站出来替天行道。这种污点艺人应该早点封杀，人设早已经崩塌，人气也早晚蒸。
Incredible use of dynamic range there. Things become so intense. They just keep building and building and building. It just shows how feral people can become, especially when they've got really strong passion feelings online and there's no filter. Makes you wonder how the rest of the track is going to be like that. Is that response, I suppose? It reminds me like a version of Stan if Eminem completely burned his bridges.
大慈大悲的观世音菩萨，您是否能够听到？我觉得我的人生已经步入了绝境，仿佛被困在冰窖。
Grace switched to the lo-fi hip-hop jazz chords.
从不会停，对待音乐依然专注。同时，我也忏悔我的罪行，希望能够得到宽恕。 我分得清是非善恶，我也相信因果。我全力在解释这一切，依然没人信我。善恶已被定夺，只剩下选择迎合，都是咎自取，自己种下的心魔。我无法面对现实，所以到处躲避。而平生枪林弹雨，无法承受火力，不在沉默中灭亡，就沉默中爆发。不知道我的困惑，你能听到吗？
I get it. It's like something's blossoming in new life from that understanding, that realization. Must be a hell of a thing to go through, having to deal with that much criticism, you know? Whether or not it was deserved.
我玩不转这游戏，音乐就是我的生命。我愤怒的原因是他们看不见伪善者的狰狞。有很多话想说，奈何只能保持沉默。过我没数据公司没后台，没好男人的人设，受我一线狡诈人品差，只会哄粉丝骗钱。歌词的锅我背了2年，无任何怨言。如果真因为花边新闻打压我，心甘情愿被骂。这边圣诞夜和超社会，哪一首更可怕？歌曲开始连夜下架，给了认真破口大骂，说毁了文化，炸了地基，拆了这座大厦。连门3刀的白莲花，坏神皮囊说你丑，都是表面的 peace， 背后的鲜花只会窝里斗。该认的错早认了，这份总比回忆更多。表达的过于笨拙，让他们更加恨我。每天过得一样顿挫，也鼓励自己振作，用音乐将他们震慑，方能解开心里的困惑。怎么办？所谓的嬉笑和脑残全都是我的 fan。
What you'll notice is that you have like lots of syllables and lots of intensity and speed, and then occasionally rappers will slow it down, have like a word go boof, and that break is so important because if you have 6 minutes of constant, you'll just lose yourself in it. You'll lose attention. It'll just become all the same, and by that virtue, nothing. There need to be breaks there, so I'm glad we had that.
主动节约，最后的希望也被我踩断。为了照顾兄弟情绪，我损失了1200万，把所有罪名全部抛开，我才强制我改善。坠入到海浪花，溅起离上遍体，我才看明白人心可以黑的深不见底。我人生专家，精彩的可以拍成一部电影。看我被千刀万剐的同时，还想我都建议 my bro， 要不要连我今生的一条命也带走？原来我一直活在戒备里，自我感动。年少轻狂的聊废话，自责的山羊。赛道前人无限放大 ，Oh no！ 他们的埋怨我再也无法忍受，想与死亡破，但依然说不出口，受尽折磨也做不了那么 baby。审判我之前，别忘了要先审视自己啊。
To inspect me, please first inspect yourselves. I think that's a wonderful line. It kind of reminds me of the if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones.
痛到无法说话，却不是他要的回答。的时光吧，哦呀，把该放下的放下，怎么说我都随他，爱我恨我也作罢。Ain't nobody 能够做到一步登天，我知道我已经无法回到那从前。
They're used to strings and keys here.
我的宝贝，不想失去制高点，却反而变得遥远。严酷寒冬消失后的春夏。的路会被雨水冲刷，努力才配拥有正茂风华，经历就是指引人生的灯塔。I'm sorry， 我为刚才的冲动表示抱歉，我不是为了借口选择抱怨。世间的任何事物都有两面，我将自己毫无保留地展现。当初也觉得自己像一个败笔，无助之际也曾虐待自己，可每次有人成为被黑暗笼罩的载体，我真的希望有人能够说句爱你。
Damn. PG1, Kill the One, lyric video. Wild, man. Let's talk about that. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an excellent PG1 titled Kill the One. Now, what I think this track is about, I think it's fairly clear that it's about the people, what they've said about the person and their career and the actions they've made, and just being horrifically violent and abusive towards them, regardless of whether it's justifiable. I know how people can be online, and if they smell blood, there can be some real shit. It can be a real shit time for anyone who's on the other side of that. So again, I don't know what happened to PG1. I can't remember the exact details off the top of my head, but to go through that regardless is just awful, man. But yeah, no, I think that the other half of it is PG1 talking about their perspective, asking Buddha what to do, trying to sort of figure out where to go next, and then starting to find their own footing, talking about the fact they're just going to keep moving forward. They're sorry, but they just going to continue forward. They can't change what happened, what occurred, etc. They wish they had whatever to be able to sort of do what they needed to do, but they don't feel like they can do that, and they realize that if they were to try to act in a way where it might compromise them, it might even do even more damage, so they're just trying to sort of move on. I think that it's a mature take on it. I think that the way that we presented the one side is the people looking at them and attacking them, that's probably quite accurate. It's probably based off of what people have been saying. And again, I'm not justifying their behavior because I don't know enough, but they have the opportunity to defend. And I think the best way they could have done that is through this track. So if we talk about how it was done, we had three main sections where we had the you know, like the initial part where there was a person sort of writing comments and stuff like that. We had the second part where it was like looking to a higher power for guidance, and then the third part which is sort of addressing the fans more directly and sort of talking about, well, like, this is what it is, this is what I've got to do now. I think that that's very meaningful and clever in the way it's structured and implemented, but the rapping is on point a lot of the time. There's a wide variation of different sort of rhythms and grooves within it. The words come through clearly, great control and technique on the mic, very comfortable in their range. And it wasn't just like the traditional sort of like percussive rapping either. It wasn't monotonous. There was great use of color and melody later on when we kind of articulated ourselves in a way that was very respectful to the rest of the arrangement, especially with those really colorful strings and key parts, you know. When you have those extensions, you're able to explore, if you know, their modalities and everything like that, and it's clear we understood that here. There was a great amount of sort of emotion behind it as well. We seemed very authentic with the way we were sort of like articulating ourselves, not articulating, but like expressing ourselves, should I say. And we were able to sort of, I think, capture the mood of the people making the comments to, like, especially with like the vocal modulation in the second half of that first bit where it kind of becomes sort of more demonic sounding with the robotic kind of metatune stuff, but also how things get kind of really kind of like quiet in that middle bit there, and we're sort of a bit more sort of like vulnerable with that taken a bit quieter. And we kind of build back up as we start to gather some steam and choose our new direction. Very capable rapper and musician, expressed themselves well, told a really compelling story that had me hooked from start till finish, and even at the end of the 6 minutes it seemed too short. The track at 6 minutes, you know, with a rapper who clearly knows what they're doing and a story that's, you know, very intriguing and rapturing, you know, we had a wide variety of different elements. Basically, it was more of a sort of a focus on like synths, keys, bass, and drums with some strings interspersed and stuff like that. The beginning part here we had like kind of a lo-fi kind of like synthy kind of unnerving element to it, with some saxophones as well, you know, really pretty, with some clicks as well. And then later on, I think I've actually seen people like putting that in videos and stuff like that as like part of like a TikTok thing or something, which is kind of wild in its own respect. But there's just a wide variety of different instruments here used at different parts to elicit the proper emotional response, and I think to sort of help the listener understand how the person is feeling, even though they're being told it expressly through the words. There is a sense of space throughout the entire thing. There's no real kind of effort to keep the listener moving along, in the sense that it's more about the vocals being the entire focal point. If there are drums, it's either to fill in that low to mid range or to kind of add sort of a more sort of contemporary aesthetic to it, with the 8th and 16th note, some of the sort of a trap elements with like the claps and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely I like the fact there were less drums in this and we allowed things to float like it was going on in our own head and we're sort of figuring stuff out. The piano keys that we had in that midsection there after the saxophone bit, or during the saxophone bit, were wonderful. I think that they showed a sense of, they sounded wholesome, they sounded sad, bittersweet, but because of the fact they had extensions in them, they sounded emotionally complicated, which was kind of the situation that PG1 was dealing with at the time, so I think that's very appropriate. It also had a sense of sophistication to it, like we were turning a corner, like we were looking at like an alternative direction to try and improve things, and we're just kind of getting on with life. And the bass lines provided a sort of like a sense of like kind of anchored everything quite nicely. I think that they brought things forward in a way which was very kind of satisfying. It was not overpowering. It's not like it was trying to slam your subwoofer, but it was more just like in the absence of some positions where there was like a definitive like chord progression, it gave us something to hold on to outside of the vocals and potentially the drums and such. And any other sort of synth arrangements there, any efforts there were either to elicit the appropriate sort of like interpretation of what the vocals were trying to communicate, or they were there simply to kind of fill in a sort of a pad-like aesthetic there that kind of fleshed out the sides of the stereo field in the mid-range, or provided a sense of unease like in the beginning where it was just like the clicking, clacking on the keyboard, which I'll also note, the use of Foley with the key clicking and stuff like that with the comments, it helps you figure out immediately, even if you don't understand the language, that is probably people complaining online about stuff, and you kind of get the phrase of it, as well as like with the, again, those metatune overdubs later on, that there's not particularly good stuff that they're saying. especially when they're making a comment that big. The theme itself starts kind of unnerving and kind of sad and kind of like desolate, and eventually comes to a sort of sense of resolution and peace, and then almost grace with the differences in the chord progressions, the different instruments, etc. And I like the fact that cinematically it makes sense with the video there. It was, you know, a hell of a performance, and I think that the relative minimalism in the arrangement with like stuff too much, there was never too much stuff going on at the same time. It never took focus away from the storytelling. Ultimately, it was a journey we went on as sort of like through composed. I think it was very satisfying. The studio recording, mixing and mastering was tight. It was commercial grade, no complaints about it. Clarity of the vocals with little bits of meta-tune and stuff like that as well. Maybe some overdubs occasionally, very crisp and clear. The sort of bass, drums, saxophones, the pads, keys, any other parts there were nicely filled and EQ'd. Very elegant within their position in the stereo field and frequency spectrum with no resonant frequencies there. There was a lot of dynamic range. Things really just came down to almost like a standstill occasionally, and there was a great sense of space and width to it and depth. That was, you know, impressive. And it was nice and without pumping, so the bus compression limiting was handled. This is effectively my review of this track from an act named PG1 titled Kill the One. It's one I'm very satisfied with. I'm sorry that they had to go through that. With the understanding, I'm not sure of the context. Maybe they deserved to go through this. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. It can be a firestorm. But if you like this track, please go show PG1 some love via their various social medias and YouTube page. And stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time. As either hell more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next SP Patrons video. Spiderhands out.